Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. I was almost going to say your favorite coffee podcast out there, but
nice, dude.
but
Nice.
I don't know if I'm quite bold enough to say that, even though there aren't very many coffee podcasts in the world. You can probably count them all on one hand.
Dude,
and I'll say this: some that are actually actively posting. I'll say this: there's plenty. Yeah. So,
I agree.
which is actually on the flip side, it's kind of unfortunate. I wish there were more coffee podcasts because I would listen to them. Fair. But you have like the legendary, Keys to the Shop with Chris, Cat and Cloud.
Yep.
Legends. OG. They're very OG. As OG, Maybe
Cutting
as OG
edge.
as Keys to the Shop, because Keys to the Shop is
what
are they? Keys to the Shop is at like episode 600 something. It's
really?
Long. I don't know. I think so.
Wild.
So Chris is just cranking. So but
I think
other than that, I'm just like not quite sure.
I think as a podcast,
Valor's also killing it. I'll tell you that.
Valor's doing a good job.
They're cranking episodes too. So
did Valor win a Sprudge?
I'm not quite sure, actually.
Dude,
I'm not quite sure who won the podcast.
When we win a Sprudge, not if. When we win a Sprudge, we have to change our whole intro. We automatically get a jingle. In the jingle is Sprudge winning.
No. Like we can't. No.
Like Academy Award nominated, Sprudge winning. No,
hire a whole.
No, I think as a podcast, I would also feel like we arrive when the mere Instagram gets a DM from Jared or Chris Baca, and it's like, dude, that episode, that hit.
Yeah.
For me, at least. Or Chris DeFurio.
Chris DeFurio has given us some love. He left us a review.
Chris, my guy.
He's reposted some of our clips.
Sick,
He's
what?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah. He's a fan.
Podcast clips?
Yeah.
Chris DeFurio?
The man, the myth, the legend. So.
On his personal account?
No, on his Keys to the Shop account.
What? Dude, are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Let's pour some Batchy. Let's get into this.
Dude. We've arrived almost.
Almost. It's good. It's.
If you're, come on, Chris. Come on, Jared.
I'm expecting the wildest Batchy we've ever had.
I don't know, dude. Do you think it's over extracted?
Maybe pushing it. Maybe just Maybe pushing it just a hair. I actually think it might be properly extracted.
Thoughts?
I mean, it's nice. It's nice. It's got more of a traditional washed.
It's got some crunch to it.
Not a anaerobic washed, but like
is it an anaerobic wash?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. It doesn't taste like it. No. So it's not like that, like candied fruitiness that you're getting from, like, for example, our Miller has a little bit of that. It's like
it does, like almost like a simple syrup Jolly Rancher thing.
Yeah. The geisha. Yeah, our geisha is a washed anaerobic, so it has some of that fruit on the front end. Yeah. Also, but
it's also I feel like with anaerobic wash coffees, it's less even about the quote unquote flavor notes. It's how the flavor notes are revealed in the cup. You can have two coffees, one anaerobic washed and one just washed, and they both have like flavor note citrus, but they hit so different. Yeah. And I think that's what you're talking about.
This does have like in the body of it, like right in the middle, it does have this interesting, like, I don't want to say stone fruit, but it has this interesting flavor, maybe like a sweet orange, I don't know, maybe a little bit of actually, I would go out on the limb and say apricot even.
Plum? No, that's too dark. What flavor?
Hey, this might be crazy. But there's a little bit of it that reminds me of like one of Scott's Colombian. Listen. And I'm actually picking up some mango in here. So we're just done.
Just resting my head on the mic, dude. It's not a mic drop, it's a head drop, dude. I can't believe you just said that. You might as well announce who the roaster is now, dude, before I say anything negative. You might as well.
Listen, it's not this. I'm not gonna say it's just reminiscent. It's just the thought of it. Okay. But I will say it has very nice. I mean, the back end, the acidity has some nice. It's just. I'm actually really digging. I'm digging it.
To me, I'm just picking up almonds, and that's my struggle. It's not nutty. Just a lot of like almond.
Oh, dude, no. There's actually some like acidity that comes through. That's almost like bites the tongue a little bit with like this nice. Again, maybe a little bit of orange fruit, apple.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't.
Little
yeah,
nectarine. I don't know.
Yeah,
but I mean,
it's fine. It's a good coffee. I'd give my extraction more of a pat on the back than the roast on it, but I'm just being savage. That's fine. I'm just kidding.
Your over extracted extraction.
It's close. You said it was. I mean, don't you always want to like lean on the edge of like towards over extraction? Like you want to get that 23% or something like that. You know.
I mean,
I think I hit 23, dude. 22.75. Oh, that was nice. That was a hit of white wine on that. That was nice.
I'm telling you, it's got some good stuff in there. It's like surprising. So this is a Colombian washed coffee from Roasted by Woods Coffee. Their single origin bean.
Single.
That's so dumb. Why would I ever say a single origin bean? What is this?
If I
what is? Do I need to go to Texas A&M right now?
Dude, good segue.
Do I need to go touch up on my vocab?
You need a academic coffee certificate.
I do. It sure sounds like it. Dude. So
honestly, if I was DJing, if I was Fred again, I would use that little bit right there and just a bean. They're
just two dubstep references in the last 2 episodes.
Really?
I don't know what's going on with
real?
them.
Dude, wild.
So, but yeah, lovely coffee. I'm happy with it. I mean, it's not bonkers, but it's good.
It's good.
Yeah. So that being said, going to school,
dude.
Going to
get
school.
Educated.
Exactly.
Stay sharp.
I would not. I did not like school.
In general, like high school, or are you talking about post?
I think in general. I think high school or college. I don't think the system quite fits my style of learning, but also
for sure not.
And I like learning. I think I would go back to school, like in my free time later on.
Dude, Mark, you went to school to be a hacker, dude.
Just to learn. I know, a pro hacker, and then I dropped out because I just realized it.
Dude, hacking's not the way, not the life for you. Dude.
No. Yeah, so I like the learning. I just don't like that it's just like you're like cramming a bunch of things in, and then you're taking tests and exams, and they're like trying to, if you don't fail, you can't move on, and they're like putting all this like unnecessary stress. I'm like, bro, I just want to I just want to learn.
I just want to learn,
bro.
Dude. Let me learn.
Like, let me sit in on class. I would go back to school to sit in on class, fail every class, but just to sit in on it.
I don't know.
That's cool.
I really enjoy getting good grades. Like, I think in high school, especially, like college is a different story. In high school, like the motivation was like it wasn't a lack of motivation. It was just like the fact that like I just didn't want to be at my high school.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to learn. I just didn't want to be at my high school.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was there's a lack of motivation there. But I also think in post high school, especially when I went a little bit to nursing school, and then when I went to theology school, I was just like, okay, like I really enjoy doing this. Like sitting, like philosophy stuff, like sitting there and just like discussing just topics. Like debate. I was good at debate.
That's the thing I would take. That's the stuff I would enjoy.
Yeah. Dude, my going back to high school, my high school project, like, the one that you have to graduate. I didn't even study for it. I showed up and they just said, hey, you need to talk about this. And I did an oral presentation completely on the fly and aced it.
Yeah, of course. They'd pass anybody.
I mean, our high school possibly.
They're like,
dude, let this kid go.
They're like, dude, we just need more equality in the world. So let's just let everybody go.
Dude, I thought
let them just send them on, dude. Send them through. So, would you go to this Texas school? What's this Texas school? Tell me that we're talking about here
basically,
today.
Yeah. I was reading Barista Mag, and dude, I'm a Barista Mag subscriber now. Finally cashed in one of those coupon codes, dude.
Wow.
From the Throwdown
Big
or
wins.
a Throwdown. Anyway, came across this article that was talking about Texas A&M University offers the nation's first academic coffee certificate, which is, we'll unpack that, but it's both a big deal and not such a big deal because one, I did some schooling for coffee through the SCA, and schooling, I mean by like certificate programs, right? But there's a big difference between going to a school that's like, like the Specialty Coffee Association, like you're a barista pro, roaster pro, whatever, you know what I mean? Versus going into like, okay, this is a university accredited certificate program. Like this could be an elective if you're at university, right? So going to something like that is a whole different ballgame, I think. Would I do it? Probably not. Like I'm not pursuing a degree right now from Texas A&M, so I probably wouldn't do that. Do I have intrigue about going to it? No. Do I have intrigue about the program and its effect on how and why this program is important to our industry? I do. And the whole crux of the article is basically, I'm gonna just read it so I don't mess anything up. It says, according to the National Coffee Association, that's the NCA, coffee consumption in the United States is at an all-time high. And research from the Specialty Coffee Association, the SCA, echoes this data. So two associations have come to a conclusion, indicating that the specialty coffee sector is experiencing rapid expansion. In other words, people want coffee, good coffee, which means more jobs are opening up for the people who know how to provide it. So that's the crux of this whole article, but also this whole idea of creating a coffee course or a coffee certificate program, meaning that part of what Texas A&M and I guess whoever makes these decisions is looking at it and saying, hey, coffee, people are drinking so much coffee, a lot of cafes are opening up if people are drinking more coffee, or people are buying more coffee at home. So we need to provide some kind of source and some kind of material to help people understand coffee. Not only specifically like the business of coffee, it's not predominantly about how to run a coffee shop. It's more or less generally speaking coffee. And this whole course takes people from farm to cup. Imagine again, it's like an academic certificate program, so it's not going to be like 4 years of study. It's not a bachelor's degree. Could it go that way? Maybe we can talk about that. But for now, it's like a few classes on understanding what happens from bean to cup, which to me also communicates this is base level generic knowledge, which isn't bad because everyone has to start somewhere. But then the reality is, it's accredited by a major university. So it's different than just the SC education program. Thoughts? It kind of makes it feel more legit, right?
Is it a class? Is it a program? Is it multiple classes?
It's multiple courses. Yeah. But it's a academic, it gives you an academic coffee certificate. It's still pretty vague, obviously, right? Yeah. It's not a 4-year degree. My speculation is that if this is something that works, could it potentially become something like a bigger degree? And because the crux of this whole course and this conversation is rapid expansion in the industry. So, which that's also interesting.
Yeah.
Like imagine like both the NCA and SCA are talking about the fact that the industry is just growing so fast that this course seems to be necessary.
Yeah, that's interesting. my mind goes into different places. A very pessimistic perspective on this and a very optimistic. Totally. Number one is like figuring out how do we cash in on something that's growing. And because the education system is very flawed and reckless, they're gonna run after something just to get a couple wins. On the flip side, the optimistic perspective is really like, you know, if you're studying to be an engineer, I'm assuming, I don't know how this works, but if you're studying to be an engineer, if you're studying to be really anything, and you need like an elective, like political science, or you need like an English elective, this is gonna fill one of the categories that you can
potentially
take. And so whether or not you become a coffee professional, a coffee worker, a barista, anything, what intrigues me is like that information is going to be shared. People are going to be more educated about the bean, which is going to be very beneficial, I think, in the grand scheme of things. Like I think the biggest problem with coffee in general is it's been, I believe other countries do coffee much better than the States. B, we still hold on to a lot of ancient, I mean like 100 years ago, 1950, 60, 70 culture of like the diner coffee. In the sense of like, if you walk in, people are like, oh, why is drip $3? They're, because they're so expecting of, you know what I mean? And so I think that's a part of it, but then also there's just such a lack of education and exposure and knowledge. So to think that, hey, like now people from all like pursuing their major degree, their 4-year degree, could use a few quarters learning about coffee that could help them get their degree in general, but also get them a little more educated. So next time they walk into a cafe, they're going to know what single origin means. And to be honest, just knowing what single origin means is going to be already a big deal. Like the amount of people that still say, hey, what blend are you roasting? I'm like, can we just
again, you know? That's where my head is at too, is like, is this, who's going to take this course? Why would they take it? And what is the benefit for someone to have this course? Right? Like, let's say you're just, Fred, and you are at Texas A&M. Do you just take this for like, I want to know more about coffee? Like, or are you, Sally, and you're looking, Sally, that name made me laugh for a minute. I thought of Gary Vee when I said it. I don't know. I don't know why. Anyway, Sally. So you're Sally, and you're like, okay, like I want a job at, Fine Coffee over in Texas. And you're like, I'm going to go get this degree so I can get this job. That's also a different story. And then if you're like, hey, both sides, two different demographics are getting this certificate because they simply want to know more. Those are all different, I think, contexts for doing the certificate program, but it also speaks highly of like, okay, where our industry is going potentially, right? And it also it has a voice in like why and how are people consuming this kind of education, for what reason, right? It does affect the market because one, like, listen, if this program grows, or even if it doesn't, if it stays at that, like as someone who hires people for coffee, like what do I do with someone's resume that says, hey, I have the Texas A&M coffee academic certificate? What do I do with that? Do I take it seriously? Do I not? Do I respect their time for investing into that? How do I look at that, right? And then does this change the barrier to entry in being a barista or being a coffee worker? Those, from a coffee professional's point of view, those are kind of my thoughts. Like, what does this do? I was talking to one of the baristas, and he's like, "Oh, that's super dope. That's super sick." And I'm like, I mean, yeah, that is. But like, what do I do when two of you look the same, act the same, have the same vibe, fit the same culture? One has this degree and one doesn't. The thing is, if I choose someone with that degree, all of a sudden I'm saying like that has so much value that I'm gonna like choose someone with that certificate. Or if I don't hire someone with that certificate, then am I saying that that certificate has like no value? That's kind of, I know some people could listen to this and then be challenged me like, well, you're hiring for other reasons. I get that. That's not the conversation happening. I'm talking about more or less, what does the value of the certificate program do to people who take it? What is the value of that for them? And then also, as someone who employs people into the industry, what value does it have for me? That makes sense? Long ramble.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure, but I do think that it's not the end of the world if you don't have that degree, even if it just,
or certificate,
or whatever it is, because I think just the nature of schooling, especially in today's world, has changed quite drastically. Like, schooling you're seeing more and more people actually not go to school, and do other things outside of going to school.
Right.
Like, I think we were living in the bell curve of, like, at some point, like, I think especially maybe the tail end of me attending school, but especially you attending school and before, school was just held on such a high pedestal,
right,
of like, this is the American dream. You have to go to school to get a degree so that you can get a good job, and then you can just live your life and build a career for yourself, which I think, a lot of statistics shows that it's kind of a dying concept because of the difficulty of people going to school and then not getting the jobs. Like, it's much less of a guarantee. It's much more riskier to go to school because you don't know if you're going to get paid to, to pay that off. So I think the confidence in the school system, education system. It's the school system plus the employee. I don't even know the workforce, the career. Just those. I think the confidence of both of those have kind of come down, and so I don't think it's, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's the end of the world. Yeah. But that's also not to say that education isn't important as well. Yeah. It's kind of a two-way street here because. Right. Yeah, you can take this in the minor sense of, if you have your Q graders, not a K, your Q grader, which is just pretty much the same thing, just maybe on a different standard in a different school and a different, it's just different. Yeah. You all of a sudden, the Q grader does stand a slightly higher chance of maybe getting a job somewhere, like for an importing company or for a quality heavy, like that does benefit you. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm not necessarily giving like some kind of conclusion. Yeah. But I think there's a little less black and white here. But I think one thing I will say though, last thing, is the whole, like, if you're going to go and attend just like the Q grader, is what's the return that you're getting from that? Like, are you going to get, like you said, like, are you going to get paid more? Yeah. Or are you not? And is it worth it? Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. And the main thing is, like, one, you bring up the Q, and I myself came from like the SCA courses, like, background. And like my employer and myself, like, invested thousands of dollars to get those certificates. And my question is, like yours, is like, did those certificates benefit me in getting a job and getting paid more? Right. Maybe. Sometimes they did, Yeah. Oh, and the other side of it, did they actually educate me? Did they inform me? Yeah. And then the other side of it is, when I'm working behind the bar and someone looks at me and walks into the cafe and it's like, oh, dude, when are you going to get a real job? Like, right. You know what I mean? How many times, like, do people walk in, look at a barista, and are like, dude, sick, they're a college student just trying to crank out some, of course, bean juice so that they can get into their job. Yeah. And there's still a stigma overall that, being a coffee professional is not a legitimate career. And my thing is, like, maybe this is just the beginning to the fact that a major U.S. university is creating a academic coffee certificate. It's not a 4-year degree. It's not a quote unquote, like, you can't get your bachelor's in coffee brewing, whatever, you know what I mean? It's not that. But is this a projection into the direction of being, like,
hey, maybe at some point with a education system that is still valued in the United States, it's definitely not flawless. It's definitely problematic. But we still have this structure that if you graduate from an Ivy League school or this one school, or you got your bar or law degree here, there's value to that, right? Reputation to that. Would the reputation of having this certificate, applying for a job, one, grant you the job, and two, give you more pay because you did invest money into that?
Yeah.
And then the other side is like, how is this going to affect the perception of the general coffee consumers? Will they then walk in and be like, oh, you have the, academic certificate from Texas A&M. You're actually a legitimate barista.
Yeah.
And if that's the case and it deserves higher pay, then will the general consumer take higher coffee education from something like a university and be willing to pay more for their drip coffee? Right? So to me, when I look at this in general, higher education within the coffee sector, I'm like, I get stoked on it because one, like you said in the beginning, I love learning, love education. It's important. But when we start to dabble with something like a major university, which you just said is flawed, which we all know requires money to attend, how does that tweak perception of what we do? Is it good for us? Is it bad for us? So those are kind of my thoughts, and that's where I was like reading this, and I'm like, dude, what will this do? And then down the road, looking at the future, if this does create more opportunities for people, that's great. That's awesome. If you walk into a cafe and this certificate is going to grant you the job, like, I'm proud of you. That's super sick. And I'm like, okay, if this is all in the crux of the fact that our industry is growing at such a massive rate that we need to educate people more broadly, that's also very, very solid, So I don't know. That was just a lot of thoughts, a lot of rambling about it. But hopefully that this, like you said, hopefully this is a benefit to the general public, not just coffee professionals, but hopefully this does legitimize being in the industry.
Yeah. I think we're still very far, I think, from a general public perception changing about coffee, like on a very big scale. But at the same time, I think we've already gone a far way, like in the last 10, 15 years. Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this, like home baristas owning these insane setups at home. Yeah. The home coffee shop conversation. Yeah. We were just talking about like Best of Panama, just like record breaking. Yeah. Like sales. The normalization now of like pour overs costing a little extra at cafes, which is, realistically, it's just a drip coffee. Right. Like it's just black coffee. Yeah. But the fact that now there's at least a value or a desire for it, it is changing. And I don't think the approach here is to say, well, it's either going to help or it's not. Yeah. I think the perception here is that like it's another debt in the I don't know in whatever in culture that it's gonna take a bunch of those. What's the phrase called, like death by 1,000 cuts or something, where it's like, you're not gonna die because of one big cut. It's just a bunch of little ones that are really reinforming a concept, that are changing the narrative, that are telling the story, that are educating people. And at some point, I think years and years down the line, these little changes in different niches and organizations and spheres hopefully are going to really even stimulate even more of the coffee industry, which is going to be killer for everybody. Roasters, cafes, coffee drinkers, and just everything. So it's cool.
Part of me is like, I'm kind of like ish stoked on it. I'm like, hey, like people, there's going to be like an accredited like major university that when you do say, when you're like chilling behind the bar, pulling some shots, and someone says like, I don't know, maybe I'm just like butthurt right now. Like, I don't get this a lot, but it just triggered the idea of like a lot of the times I hear the whole, oh, when are you going to get a real job? You know? And if you don't own a business, and if you don't like manage a cafe, or if you don't, you know, start cafes, like it's kind of like, oh, this is such a entry level job, like grow up kind of thing. Yeah. And I'm hoping like things like this like legitimize the idea of like, hey, like coffee can be a career and a profession, whether you work as a barista or you're a tech or you're working for an importing company. Like there's a lot of potential in that. And that's where I think my head is at, is I'm like, hopefully not to say that I'm, you know, putting all my eggs in the basket of like Texas A&M academic coffee certificate. That's not the thing. That's just what sparked that thought, because, hopefully that'll put that, like you're saying, that little dent in the perception of what we think being a coffee professional is. Yeah.
Yeah. That's, there's I think it's like I think the fact that, again, like we're holding on to these, like I think a lot of culture is just so rooted in those 60s, 70s, 80s, like coffee perception, and culture just hasn't caught up really. Even though we've made so much advancements as an industry. So if you think about it as just a cup of black, you know, a cup of Joe. It's going to be very, very basic, but, slow. I think slow growth. I think it's growing. More people are drinking specialty coffee than ever before, which is supposedly great. That's just good news. That's good stuff. Good news. So last words?
No, that's good. I mean, I know this episode is more or less like me fleshing out ideas, like brainstorming. I don't know. I was just super intrigued by that. I think that's super dope. Like, we'll see what happens, you know.
There it is, folks. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. And friends, as we always say, remember, reflect what's good.